Thank you for joining us. I'm Joy.
And I'm Laura.
And this is The Witches of Levers, a supernatural rewatch podcast.
Buckle up as we dive into Season 1, Episode 11, Scarecrow.
Okay, Laura, what did you think of this episode? Because this is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, I really liked this one. It was really fun. And it was actually really scary as well. Like, I have to say, this whole series so far has just been amazing because there might have been a couple of episodes that we didn't like as much, but they were still good. So, like, Phantom Traveller and Bugs weren't the best episodes, but they still weren't bad. And there's been so many that are this kind of story that I really like. So, like this one, Hookman, Wendigo, all of that. They're just really good. And Bloody Mary. There's been so many like really good episodes.
Yeah, I really feel like their Monster of the Week folklore is one of my favorite things. And I think that what all of those episodes have in common is it's doing what Eric Kripke was talking about really wanting to do, which is to take a show and explore legend and folklore and just really mix things up and make something that hits on all of our real fears and some of our sort of more mythic ones. And I love the Monster of the Week episodes. I think they're amazing. I think that it's been really educational and really interesting going through each episode and finding like Easter eggs with purpose. And some of them were just scary, don't get me wrong. But I felt like more than most shows of this era and genre, I feel like they had a purpose, like they had a message, like they wanted to talk to us about violence against women. They wanted to talk to us about like the different statistics in different states for things. Like I feel like everything is highlighting some issue between the brothers or the relationship between them and their dad, or taking us through a conversation about PTSD and what that looks like and how they support each other and how they give each other hope. I feel like is one of the reasons why the audience and the fandom is so strong, because like each episode actually has a lesson in it. It's like when you're a kid and you enjoy reading fables or like reading scary fairy tales because it's fun to jump in a scare and a laugh, and you can bond over that with other people, but also there's like a little bit of a moral to each tale, and that I think just enriches it.
Yeah, I think that is what I like about it. You've just summed that up really well. I thought I was going to enjoy the series, the show as a whole.
Yeah.
But I'm like loving it. I love it.
I'm so happy to hear that because I obviously love the show. And I was pretty sure that you were going to be on the same page with me. But I am literally delighted that we're having the same level of excitement and we're just having the time of our lives going through each episode. Like even the ones that we think are a little silly and we have fair criticisms of or fair red flags of, like there's still so much meat on those bones and we're still having such a great laugh. And I think that's a testament to the quality of writing in general.
Yeah, yes. And this episode in particular, I also like how we always make references to other films and things that in the...
yeah, we do, but the show does it too.
Yeah, and that's another one with this one. So the ones I wrote down for this one, it gives me Wicker Man, Children of the Corn, and Midsummer vibes. Then it's not quite the same story as any of those, but the kind of ritual sacrifice theme is present in all of those. And also a bit of Jeepers Creepers, and I don't quite know why, but that one, I kept thinking of Jeepers Creepers the whole time.
No, I can tell you what. It's because the creature, especially in the first film with the like scraggly gray hair and the hat and the scarecrow-like nature of it, and the fact that they first encounter him in fields, because you said Jeepers Creepers. Like we were messaging each other back and forth watching the episode, and she said Jeepers Creepers, and I just went, yes. It really gives Jeepers Creepers vibes. And there's also the way that it happens cyclically, in Jeepers Creepers. And then I have a fun fact for you. So the girl who plays Holly at the beginning also played a character in Jeepers Creepers. Because I was looking at her and I was like, you look so familiar to me. And I had to go and look up what other things she'd done. And there was this whole list of things that she'd been in that I'd seen. She was in, I think it's her, there's a list of actors in it. I have it in my notes, but I think she's the one who's in X-Files, Dark Angel, Jeepers Creepers and other stuff. So there's like connections to the other actors too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the actress who plays Meg was in the X-Files. She was born in Oklahoma, which is a Crypt Key Easter egg. And she was in Jeepers Creepers and Dark Angel. Sorry, so wrong one. The other
Okay,
one,
so
she
Meg.
was in okay. Laura Gilchrist plays Holly, and she was in Sanctuary, The Bionic Woman, Blood Ties, and Bates Motel.
Okay. I think I've only seen Bates Motel out of those.
So I saw her in The Bionic Woman. She was in the remake, and she plays the Bionic Woman in it. I've seen Blood Ties, I've seen Sanctuary, and I've seen Bates Motel. Like, I've seen all of them. Basically, she was just in everything that I was watching at that time period. So when I saw her in this episode, I was just like, I know that face. Let me find the Kripke, Ohio thing. Okay. So Kripke says, so I started focusing on running shows and writing, not necessarily directing. And then coming out here from Ohio and breaking into the business was something that I really wanted to do. And between this interview and some other interviews, what I pieced together is you'll find that he hires a lot of actors from the Midwest too. And fans have brought up that again and again, it's set in places in the Midwest. So like Illinois, Ohio, these various sort of states that we normally never hear about, but are really emphasized in the show. And he talks about how it's because he's from Ohio and he wanted to shine a light on the Midwest and kind of highlight it and spotlight it. And so when writers would come into the writer's room, they would know not to set it in places like New York because they would get like scowled out of the room. He wants folklore, he wants ideas and settings in the Midwest. And I thought that was really cool because it is a different way of approaching things and it highlights an area that doesn't really get a lot of traction in entertainment.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting from this interview, so this is from Eclipse magazine, it's in my show notes, is he talks about how, like, he doesn't say it outright, but basically, Sam is his self insert character. So listen to this section of the interview. Um, so he says, that's part of it too, and I'd like to take all the credit for it, but it's a real group effort. I'm a little brother, and I have a really close relationship with my big brother. And I also have several best friends that I have a tight relationship with. As a writer, I really enjoy the way guys talk, the way they say how they feel by saying absolutely nothing, because they're idiots. They're so non communicative. And I love that type of rhythm of conversation. But I'm from the Midwest and a tight knit family and a family business that goes back for generations. I left that family business, which is scrap metal, to come out to California, which sort of made me the black sheep of the family since my older brother is in the family business.
Yeah.
So he is literally Sam. He leaves the family business to go and fulfill his dreams and does things
Oh,
differently. And he goes on in the interview to talk about how his older brother's taste in music really influenced him. So his love of classic rock that he's written into Dean, and Dean telling Sam about music, is a reflection of his relationship with his brother. And he's actually working on a playlist for the show that's specifically constructed out of all of the music that is kind of the background of this relationship and therefore also Sam and Dean's relationship. And I thought that that was so cool.
that is cool. That would be an amazing road trip playlist. Just saying.
I mean, when we do our supernatural tour of the US, that's the playlist that we're
Yeah.
going to be listening to. Like, it's the law.
I always listen to like classic rock in the car when I'm because I like singing in the car like really loud. So I play a lot
Yep.
of rock ballads.
Yep. Same. So I just feel like that's an entire vibe. And I think that that's something
Yeah.
that we should absolutely do and make happen in the real world.
Yes, I agree. Should I do the synopsis?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is season 1, episode 11, Scarecrow. The original date for this episode was January 10th, 2006. Couples have been going missing on cross country trips. All have been going through the same town in Indiana, but never make their final destination. John Winchester calls Sam and Dean, telling them he's on the tail of the demon who killed their mum, and asks them to stop trying to find him. He tells them to investigate the disappearances of the couples in Indiana instead. Sam ignores John's orders and tries to follow him to California, while Dean follows the orders and investigates the disappearances of the couples. We find out that the town has been sacrificing couples to a Norse god as a way to keep their town prosperous. Dean uncovers this and saves the next couple, so they try to sacrifice him and Emily, the niece of two of the townspeople, instead. Sam turns up and rescues them. They all escape and they burn a tree that is linked to the god, destroying him.
So, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this episode is there were a lot of conversations in things like the behind the scenes about how this plot is so heavily reminiscent of Neil Gaiman and American Gods. And it
Ah,
really, really is. If you know the storylines, you absolutely can see it. And Eric Kripke has cited Neil Gaiman and American Gods several times as major influences of the show. And if
yeah.
you look at this episode, like it really is heavily influenced. This could easily be an episode of American Gods.
I think I only watched the first season of that. How many seasons has there been?
I want to say 2 or 3 off the top of my head.
Okay, I think I only watched the first one. Yeah, that's really interesting. So the opening scene, straight away, I was like, these people are too nice. Something is going on with them.
Yeah, you just
They're
go,
clearly up to no
mhm.
good.
Yeah. You're immediately suspicious, aren't you? I wrote down that it's small town America. It's very white. It's very 1950s vibes.
Yeah.
And you have them saying, and before you leave, one of our apple pies on the house. And I was like, this is a trap. I was like, it's too Hallmark. It's too cute. There's warm music. They're getting direction from the Santa Claus couple. Because they were just giving me like mom and pop
Yeah.
Santa and Mrs. Claus vibes, and I was just like, there is something wrong here. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like all of my horror movie fan like instincts were just like, it's quiet, it's too quiet. This is perfect.
Yeah.
It's too perfect, you know?
Same. I was like, they're clearly up to no good. I
Yeah.
also thought it was weird. They pointed out the guy's tattoo at the start, but then it made sense later on when Dean, that's how
Yeah.
he identifies the guy as like the scarecrow.
Hang that lantern, baby. Hang that lantern.
So this couple have stopped for gas and had something done to their car.
Yep.
Um, they're then directed out of town, and their car breaks down just outside of the town, next to an
Next
orchard.
to a spooky orchard of hazelnut trees
Creepy orchard.
pretending to be apple trees. This is their first acting job. They were paid actors as apple trees.
I didn't notice that.
The entire time I was looking, because the thing is I basically live in Wales now, and Wales is where, like, all the apple orchards are, so every single place around me is chock full of apple orchards, and I was looking at those trees, and I was like, "You, ma'am, are not an apple tree. This is an acting gig for you, isn't it?" And I went and I looked it up, and they are hazelnut trees disguised,
Ah,
pretending to be apple trees because apple trees grow a little bit more like oak trees. And these
yeah.
have all their, we call it in the South, daughters. So when they clone themselves and they have those little upshoot baby trees coming up all around them and it looks sort of spiky and at night kind of creepy, like it does in this scene, um,
Yeah.
that's a trait that just doesn't happen with apple trees.
Oh,
So they're hazelnut trees, but it's kind of cool because it really works for the scene setting because they have all of these creepy like fingers of other trees coming in front of them. They look almost cage like. And it sort of adds to the creep factor and the tension. So I thought those trees were great actors.
so to make the trees look more realistic, is that why they had to have loads of like buckets full of apples just around them all?
Yeah. So I noticed this too. And I took note of it. Um, and I said, as their car dies, it gets really weird and really spooky. And you see these baskets of apples, and I was like, it looks like some kind of dark harvest. Like it looks like they're showing us because the apples are really shiny too. And it's
Hmm.
like if you were an apple farmer, why would you leave your harvest just sitting there, just hanging around? Um,
Yeah.
there's this strange kind of cornucopia sort of display that is really reminiscent of Halloween to me, and I feel like this whole episode, like this entire setting, is very Dark Harvest, very like Halloween, very like reaping people. Um,
Yeah.
so we have I wrote down the real harvest of death vibes. Fall leaves, super long shadows, creepy spindly trees, and light barely shining through to lure them away from their car. Because the light that they see when they get out of the car and decide to go and investigate is like way down in the middle of this creepy, creepy, creepy grove of trees. And I
Yeah.
said it's very grim fairy tale vibes. As the camera pans around the couple, we see Holly looking super terrified. Um, that happens a little bit later on as they like get out of the car and start walking towards the light. But the whole thing is very much like a dark fairy tale.
Yeah.
Um, it's super spooky. There's fog coming from every angle, and it looks kind of maze like. Like every avenue of treeless looks really similar. You look at it and you just go, "No, you would get lost in there and die. No one would ever find you."
A bit like how cornfields get used in that similar way in
Exactly.
films sometimes.
Yeah, creepy harvest. It's a creepy, creepy
Yeah.
harvest.
I made a note that we have another woman who needs to trust her intuition because
Yep.
Holly instantly knows what's up because he's like, "Oh, we need to go wherever," and she's like, "No, I'm not going in there."
Yeah,
So
she said,
instantly,
"Let's not do this." And again,
yeah,
he ignores her. This is why we should listen
yeah,
to female intuition, people.
yeah. She gets convinced that it's okay, so then they go in, and then they get to the opening in the woods with the scarecrow, and I was just like, immediately no,
Yep,
because
immediately no.
I was like, why is there even a scarecrow? Do they have scarecrows in the middle of orchards? Is that I only ever see them in fields? But anyway, probably they probably do. It's just I haven't seen them,
Yeah.
and there's just creepy vibes and red flags abound. Um, and I think scarecrows actually creep me out, and I think it's the same kind of reason that clowns creep me out because it's that kind of uncanny valley, sort of looks like a
Mm.
human but has got something. They're not quite a human, and my brain doesn't like that.
Yeah, no, it's human, but it's not human. It exists in kind of a liminal space between the two, and those things are spooky. And I
Yeah,
also believe, from a witch's perspective, I believe that anytime you have something that's human shaped, like an empty vessel, it's an open
yeah.
invitation if you haven't done something around it to attract spirits into it because I think they're drawn to that. And I think that's why you get so many haunted dolls. Like that's my own personal theory
Ugh.
about that.
And I'm scared of them too.
And you are. There is an episode full of haunted dolls. Just saying.
When is that?
It's a
How
little
long
whiles
do I
down
have
the
to
way,
wait?
but I have the
Okay, good.
funniest clip of Jensen having a meltdown about it because he hates it and he gives an entire interview of why he thinks that's the scariest episode is the doll episode because he does not like them and it sounds almost word for word like what you would describe and I was just like you and Jensen same person.
I
And then
don't
he
know if
goes
I'll be
on
able
to
to
say
watch
that
that one.
his he goes on to say that his wife while they were making that episode decided to buy a haunted doll, like a creepy old vintage
No,
doll to put in their house, and then she would mess with him
no,
by hiding it around the house and moving her around to freak him out.
no. I'd have immediately divorced her.
Laura says no.
No, don't do that. Don't. No, I can't do haunted dolls. I don't. You'll have to do the episode on your own.
That's going to be interesting, just me talking to me. Like pretending to be you. Be like continuity, red flag, IMDb fact. Sam's hot when he researches.
Well, and protects people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Human shield Sam.
Uh,
Yeah.
Oh, we get a human shield Dean in this episode. Just saying. So yeah, so Holly looks at the scarecrow and is like, it scares me. And I was like, again, with the women's intuition.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
then the scarecrow starts to move because she like turns away and it moves, and I'm like, nope, nope. And then we get some very shaky handheld camera work as they're running through,
We do.
which was it's fine, it fits in the episode. And Vince disappears. Holly trips over, and then we see a very mutilated Vince, and Holly screams. A good scream this time.
I wrote
Um,
down that it was a good scream, and I thought you'd be impressed
yeah,
with it. Yeah, I rate her
yeah,
scream too.
good
She's a good
scream.
actress.
No long pauses.
No long
Um,
pauses.
and yeah, and then there's another clearing, and a creepy gallows has appeared. And then that's the end of the opening scene, and that was good because it was just really scary right from the beginning.
Oh yeah, no, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I wrote down that the Scarecrow um is looking like a murdered man strapped up like a scarecrow when they first see him because he's so realistic. And then I
Yeah.
was like, well, because that's totally what he is, as it turns out. Do they run away? No. They go in for a closer look. Therefore, death shall fall upon them because it's the rules of horror. Okay. And then Vince says, check it out if I only had a brain. And she says, we wouldn't be lost. And I was like, ooh, burn. And he says, thanks. That has got to be the freakiest damn scarecrow I've ever seen. And
Yeah,
I was
it
like,
is.
you know, I found it so funny that the writer of this episode, who did an incredible job, was a guest writer. And he is also a gay person. Okay. And I wrote down, we, the gays, cannot make Wizard of Oz, not make Wizard of Oz references. And I put the Wizard of Oz, the true gay agenda. It's just the law of the universe. I don't know what to tell you. So then I put down, they decide to leave finally, and everything turns very Wizard of Oz, but make it horror mixed with Midsummer and Jeepers Creepers. So I very much ended
Yeah.
up agreeing with your assessment too.
Yeah.
And then I put down, it's Rembrandt lighting, a very scary forest. It's cold and eerie blue and green colors on the color grade. The leaves look incredibly vibrant, which I felt like was purposeful because the whole theme of like human sacrifice to make the earth thrive.
Mhm.
The trees are really close together so that they look very like bird cage like, and it gives you this sense of tension. The fog starts rolling in, you hear the rustling, um, and then you hear like the scarecrow also has this really inhuman voice when he's attacking them.
Mm.
And when they run for the car, I put down finally. And then I wrote, it's filmed by a handheld rig where the cameraman is running with them, which really adds the frantic feeling. Because, like you said, you were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's okay, it fits." Like it's very shaky, but it's okay. I'll allow it. And I said they're both running in one shot, and then it cuts away as she looks behind her to the trees, and then we see the gleaming apples. And I thought, again, like that's an emphasis that human sacrifices for the sake of the harvest because they're
Yeah.
kind of glowing in the darkness. They look a little bit otherworldly. And then I said, but it's only a few, which to me suggests kind of an ebb in the bounty, which makes sense because we know they have to offer these people up to this being every so many years so that he gives them the bountiful harvest of apples.
Mhm.
So then we suddenly get this wide shot and she's all alone. And that's like a really good scare because suddenly Vince is just nowhere to be seen. So we
Yeah.
understand in our subconscious mind that the monster is faster than we can actually detect. And that is always terrifying to me when someone's just like when you don't see, like even when you see them yanked, it's scary. But I think for me, it's scarier when you don't see that happen. They
Mhm.
just turn around and suddenly the other person is fucking nowhere to be seen. That always scares the shit out of me. So I was like
Yeah.
clutching my pillow at this point. Um, so she calls for him, and then she hears the scarecrow sounds again, and she's like, "Oh fuck!" And she starts running again, and the creature gets closer. And now the camera has taken on the monster's point of view, so we'll see the camera tracking her, but it's like we're looking at her through the gaze of the scarecrow. Um, then she ends up falling down and she's stumbling on vents, like Laura said. And I wrote down his whole face is fucking skinned. It's all blood and
Yeah.
skull with a little bit of tissue and a corpse grid because his mouth is fucking missing. And you realize that it's taken his face for itself. Like now the scarecrow face is like the Wizard of Oz. Because you know in the Wizard of Oz, his face is made to look like a bag, isn't it? So it's like
Mhm.
literally he's ripped off her husband's face and is probably wearing it now to chase her down to kill
Ugh,
her also. And I was like, that is peak horror. That
that's
is
disgusting.
terrifying and gross. And then I wrote down, now this girl gives good scream.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good.
So she's falling backwards and she's trying to crawl away from the monster. He steps into frame and he looks enormous. And then you hear the like demonic growling, as he's probably
Yeah,
wearing her dead husband's face, can I just
the
say?
the
And then it
growling's
cuts
scary.
to a shot of the scarecrow's cross, which is empty. And the ties that would have held his arms up are like swinging in the wind. Like Laura compared it to a gallows. And I think that's really, really, really good. But we don't see Holly being murdered, but we hear her being murdered incredibly loudly as we're looking at this terrifying shot of the like scarecrow's empty cross. and I I just was like 10 out of 10. This is scaring
Yeah.
the shit out of me.
I didn't realize that that was the cross. That makes way more sense. But there's like nooses hanging from them.
It's
That's what
because
made
when
me
you,
think it was a gallows.
tie a scarecrow up, you tie the arms backwards like that. Yeah,
Ah,
that's why. I am a
I
humble country mouse, so I know these things.
so that was completely wrong what I said then.
No, I mean, it is very gallows-like, and it is also a murdered dude, so there's comparisons to be made.
Yeah, well, I just assumed that's how he was gonna then how he then killed them. But yeah, okay, that makes way more sense. Thank you, Joy.
You're welcome. Here to help. Here to actually use my film degree upon occasion.
So then the next scene is the same scene as we got from the end of last episode, but like slightly different, but it's the same
Mhm.
scene. So John is calling Dean's phone and Sam answers. And my note is my anger at John continues because
Yeah.
because he won't tell them where he is, and he says they need to stop looking for him. And I'm like, well, why has he been sending them clues then? He's been sending them clues this whole time, and now he's like, "I'll just ignore them." But we do find out that he's tracking the demon that killed their mum, and he does confirm that it's a demon, which was my prediction from
Yep.
the pilot episode.
You were right, and I was
And
so proud of you.
and he says that he's nearly closed in on it. And he says something about they're everywhere, it's not safe for them all. And I just wrote intriguing.
So I wrote down I thought it was really interesting how the way that they filmed Jeffrey Dean Morgan's coverage is really cut up close-ups, like extreme close-ups, and then you
Mm,
see his whole face. It goes back and forth, and I feel like it creates kind of like a fractured image of him. So you see a close up of his eyes at one point, you see a close up of his mouth at one point, then you see his whole face, and then it goes back to the eyes, and it's kind of just going back and forth in a way that to me makes me think that this is illustrating the distance and the brokenness of their perception of each other, because he's having this conversation with Sam, who we know they have a strained relationship. And I feel like he's trying to convey so much in a short conversation. And Sam is trying to, like, I don't want to say be the bigger person. Like, you can tell in this conversation how much Sam loves his dad, and his priority, even though we know from
mm,
Sam's point of view, he's been treated differently this whole time. He's still really concerned about his dad. And I was like, this is a total Sam moment for me. Like, the first quarter of this episode is really more Sam than Dean for me.
yeah.
So in the transcript it says, John, Sam, is that you? Sam, Dad, are you hurt? John, I'm fine. Sam, we've been looking for you everywhere. We didn't know where you were, if you were okay. John, Sammy, it's all right. What about you and Dean? And I write down, like, I thought that that was interesting because we can tell from that he really cares about them. And they obviously care, because Sam's first question is, are you okay? Are you hurt? After
Mm,
all of this, after all of his rants and raves and how angry he is at his dad, his first words out of his mouth are you okay, Dad? And I was like, that breaks my heart a little bit. And I just want to give
yeah.
Sam a hug.
Yeah. I did make a note later, I think it is, saying that he is genuinely worried about his dad. That's why he kind of goes after him.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that for sure. And he says, we're fine, Dad. Where are you? And he says, sorry, kiddo, I can't tell you that. And Sam says, what? Why not? And Dean wakes up and is like, is it Dad? And he's like shirtless, thirst trap. Okay. Thirst trap. So John says, look, I know this is hard for you to understand, but you're just going to have to trust me on this. And Sam says, you're after it, aren't you? The thing that killed Mom. And John says, yeah, it's a demon, Sam. And Sam says, a demon, you know for sure. And Dean in the background is saying, a demon? What's he saying? And John says, I do. Listen, Sammy, I also know what happened to your girlfriend. I'm so sorry. I would have done anything to protect you from that. And during the scene, like, you can see his eyes are welling up with tears, and Sam's eyes are welling up with tears. And you know that this is not a common thing for these men. So this is a really deep
Mm,
emotional exchange. And it's really, like, emotionally impactful when you're watching them trying to hold back tears while they're talking to each other after they haven't spoken for over half a year, at least, we know. Because in the last episode, they said it had been 6 months since they, like, had their last clue or heard anything.
mhm.
Um, So Sam says, "You know where it is." And John says, "Yeah, I think I'm finally closing in on it." And Sam says, "Let us help." And John says, You can't be any part of it." And I thought that's really important. That's a really important clue. And that he's saying that specifically to Sam, not Sam and Dean, but Sam. And Sam says, "Why not?" And Dean says, "Give me the phone." Like, calm down, Dean. Okay. John says, "Listen, Sammy, that's why I'm calling. You and your brother, you got to stop looking for me. All right. Now I need you to write down these names." And Sam is like, "Names? What names? Dad, talk to me. Tell me what's going on." John says, "Look, we don't have time for this. This is bigger than you think. They're everywhere. Even us talking right now, it's not safe." And I was like, "Ooh, that's interesting." And Sam says, "No. All right. No way." And Dean says, "Give me the phone again." And John says, "I've given you an order. Now you stop following me and you do your job. You understand me? Now take these names down." And Dean snatches the phone away. And they start talking right before the scene shift. But I was just like, Sam just wants a conversation and John shuts him down on the conversation. But
Mhm.
when we learn the stuff that we learn about Meg and the fact that like demons are clearly hunting them, stalking them, around them, and specifically have a special interest in Sam. And then we put together from the last episode where Mary apologizes to Sam and that these things happened in Sam's nursery, you start to think, or at least I start to feel more, even though what's happening is emotionally terrible, I start to feel more that John is protecting them instead of just being a terrible dad. Because he
Mhm.
is like aware of the fact that he's hunting demons and that he is pretty sure that they're targeting Sam. That's how this conversation comes across to me, and also with all the actions that happen in this episode. And so now I feel more like he wants Sam kept away from it because he knows they're being drawn into Sam.
Oh, so it was Sam that drew the demon in the first place, not Mary. When I was like,
Yeah.
why did Mary die? So maybe they were after the baby
Yeah.
instead of okay. That's some little puzzle pieces going together in my brain.
Yeah, it really clicked for me because on the rewatch, I'm trying my best to suppress my memories of what I know so that I can watch it with
Mhm.
you without giving you any spoilers and put the pieces together for myself. And also, it's been a really long time since I've rewatched the show right from the beginning again. So the
Yeah.
seasons that are the most fresh in my mind at the moment are like the last two seasons. They're the ones that I've seen the most recently, and they're like between I forget what 15 seasons of it. So that's a lot of material. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't have a huge memory for shows like that where I'll just automatically remember stuff. So I'll remember major plot points, but I won't remember like specific details from episode to episode. So
Mm.
um I
That's why I like rewatching shows for that.
yeah.
So because you notice more each time.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm noticing more. I feel like my impression of John has shifted so dramatically because from watching the whole show, at first I was so hard set against him because in my head I thought of all the things that Sam and Dean have gone through in their lives and I was blaming John for that. And then now as we're going through like the beginning episodes again, I'm remembering that John is actually torturing himself and keeping himself away from his sons not because he's a bad father, but because he wants to keep the demons on his tail and not on theirs, and especially
Yeah.
not Sam's.
Wouldn't you think though that he'd want Sam with him just in case? Because they could just be like, well, we're not going to go after John. We'll go after Sam because he's on his own. Well, he's with Dean, but he's not with John.
Yeah, so I felt like when I was listening to this episode, you know how he's been sending them coordinates. John has been controlling where they are. So I am
Yeah.
assuming that John is tracking the demons and specifically sending the boys on cases that keep them away from the demons because this is the first
Ah.
time that we see a demon actually manage to locate them. And she wouldn't have been able to do it except for they had that fight and Sam said, "I'm leaving." And then he goes off in the opposite direction of what his dad told him to go. So he ends up going straight towards a demon.
Oh, it's Meg a demon.
Yeah. Hence the blood bowl
Oh.
conversation.
Yeah, but
I thought you would have been
I
like, "Oh, she's a demon," because she has the like screaming bowl and she's slicing people's throats to
well,
have conversations.
I knew she was obviously evil at the end, but I didn't know she was a demon specifically. I thought maybe she was just like, I don't know. You said that witches aren't painted in a very good light in this show, so I thought maybe
Yeah.
she's a witch. Okay, so she's a demon. Okay.
I
Um,
apologize if that was a spoiler. I really thought you would be like, "Oh, she's a demon," because 'cause they're having all these
well,
demon conversations.
well, I just thought I didn't make that link. I just know she's evil. But I suppose that makes sense. I probably should have made that link.
I
Um,
thought you would have been straight in there.
well, I just thought she was. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
Fair enough,
um,
fair enough.
so John tells them to write down some names, doesn't he? Or tells Dean
Yeah,
by that point because Sam's giving him the phone.
yeah.
And he explains. So they're talking about it in the car, and says that they've all passed through the same part of Indiana. All these couples,
Mhm,
and it's always on the second week of April every year, and it's the second week in April now.
mhm.
So that kind of knowing from what was going on in the first scene, you're like, oh, okay, this must be some sort of sacrifice.
Yep,
Um, Sam's driving at this time. He pulls over
for a
and says that
change.
they're not going to Indiana. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he says they're not going there. They're going to go to California after their dad. And my note here is that I get where they're both coming from. I didn't like this scene because I don't like them splitting up.
yeah,
I was like, no, what are you doing? I don't like it. But, and they're so angry with each other. But I do get where they're both coming from. So I understand Sam's annoyance and his defiance and his like wanting answers. But I also understand Dean wanting to do what he's told and just follow orders because he probably, he trusts their dad.
yeah, yeah, he
Um,
does. He has a lot of faith in their dad, and I think when I was rewatching this and I was thinking about this from John's point of view, Dean's actually right to trust his dad. Sam's
yeah,
not wrong in his feelings and his instincts at all and wanting to go and help their dad. Like, and I think
yeah,
this is the other thing is he's not coming from a place of like he does say revenge at one point, I think, but I don't think that's actually
mm,
a motivating factor because when you listen to them talk, the first thing he says is, "Are you okay?" I think he wants to go
yeah,
help and protect his dad more than he wants revenge. Um,
yeah, same.
so I think you're right. Like I absolutely agree with you. Like watching them argue like that is so painful. Um, but you also understand exactly what they're saying because you can definitely
Yeah,
see that they both have a good argument.
yeah, yeah. I wasn't taking sides on this argument. Um, I could understand both of them.
Yeah.
I had a funny moment where it's in the same scene, but so Sam is when he's leaving and he's getting the stuff out of the back of the car, and he's like, "I'm going to California." I think did write down the actual line, which is, "This selfish bastard is going to California," because Dean calls him a selfish bastard earlier.
Yeah.
Um, And so he says, "I'm going to California." And I screamed at the television, "Well, it's the middle of the night." And then Dean literally says that
It's the middle of the night.
afterwards.
Yeah.
I was
Dean
like,
says, "It's the middle of the night. Hey, I'm taking off. I will leave your ass. You hear me?" And Sam turns around and says, "That's what I want you to do." And then they
yeah,
stare at each other and they have this like face off. And then Dean says, "Goodbye, Sam." And then he dramatically shuts the trunk of the car, gets in, and drives away.
yeah, yeah, I didn't like it. But I did think it
Yeah.
was funny that I had the same thought as Dean because I was like, "What? In the middle of the night?"
Yep.
um,
That cracks me up.
Also, like if he was a woman, he wouldn't be able to do that. There was no way that I would have got out of the car in the middle of the night and then just hitchhiked or walked along a highway.
That's also a clue that Meg is a demon.
It's not dark when he meets her, in fairness, but yeah.
But no, because would any woman in 2005 who had any option at all ever hitchhike? Even if you had no options, I feel like you would just walk. I don't feel like you would ever realistically hitchhike because you know you'd end up in a bag.
But see, again, I just thought she was a witch because of your favorite quote. I think you've said at least 3 times on this podcast so far, which is what the one about the witch in the woods. What's that quote?
Oh yeah. That a witch should never fear to walk alone in the darkest of woods because she should always understand that she is the most terrifying thing in the forest.
Yeah, so
Terry Pratchett.
a witch wouldn't be scared either.
I mean, okay, you raise a valid point. I can't tell you how valid without also accidentally giving you yet another spoiler. So I'm
No,
not going
don't.
to do that. Um, however, you're very smart and you are really on point all the time. Okay. Just
Although
all the
I did
time.
think that a scarecrow cross was a gallows earlier, and I thought she was not a demon.
I mean, to a degree, you have a point with both of those things. So I'm going to defend you.
Okay, thanks.
So the next scene that we see is we see Dean driving into this very Nordic looking town. And I say that because of the church and the decor. You see the name Jorgensen on shops, and it's raining. And I was like, this is another fun gothic situation where the weather is really reflecting the mood of what's going on between the brothers. So it's raining, it's sad, it's dark, it's
Yeah.
kind of foggy. He says, "Hi, my name is John Bonham." Isn't then the guy he's trying to interview basically interrupts and says, "Isn't that the drummer from Led Zeppelin?" And he says, "Wow,
That was
good,
really
classic
funny.
rock fan." And then he says, "So what
I
can I
loved
do for
that.
you, John?" And I was like, "That's funny because John Winchester as well."
Yeah. I thought that was
So
funny because he always tries to give a fun alias, but this guy picked up on it. I thought that was hilarious.
immediately. And I think that's I can't remember if it ever happens again. He might be the only one who's like, "Wait a second, I see what you're doing." Um, I think it maybe happens like 2 or 3 times, but it's not very often, and it is one of my favorite things in the entire world. So Dean has this flyer, I guess, that he's made up or
Mhm.
he's found on the internet of Holly and Vince, and he's interviewing Scotty and he's trying to find out if he's seen them um or what's going on. And Scotty is not giving him jack shit. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Scotty is not going to
No, he's
crack.
not.
He is part of the cult. He is not going to be breaking anytime soon.
I had a thirst trap in this bit because when Dean says, "Scotty, you've got a smile that lights up a room. Did anyone ever tell you that?" And he does a little smirk. And as we discussed before, his smirks are hot.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. And then it cuts to Sam on the highway. Thunder is rolling. We have fog. We have rain. And Sam is isolated without Dean, obviously. But and then we see a girl on the side of the road, which ends up being Meg. And
Yeah.
so she has a little bit of banter with him. Like they talk to each other. He says, "Hey," but she's wearing earphones, which is like Laura's pet peeve. Like, why would you be sitting in a road with earphones in? Um, and she's like, "You scared the hell out of me." And Sam said, "I'm sorry. I thought you might just need some help." And Meg says, "No, I'm good, thanks." And then they start talking about like where are you headed? And Meg's like, "I'm not going to tell you that." And Sam's like, "Why?" And she says, "You could be some kind of
Mhm.
freak. I mean, you are hitchhiking." And he's like, "But so are you." And then they kind of have a little laugh together. And then a creepy van guy pulls up and asks if
He is creepy.
like they need a ride. And they say yeah. And then he to Sam is like, "Just her, I ain't taking you," but it's super creepy. So she
Yeah.
grabs her stuff and gets in the van. And he says, "You trust shady van guy and not me?" And she says, "Definitely."
Yeah. So when he sees her, so he basically falls over her, and I'm like, how did he not see her? That was a very straight road. He would have seen that there was a girl sitting on the side of the road at some point. So that bit was weird. And
Yeah.
then I wrote down that Meg is clearly a true crime fan. Obviously, this is before I knew she was a demon. She's
Yeah.
clearly a true crime fan, and she doesn't want to tell him where she's going. But then she does get in the van alone with the guy, so maybe not. Um, and I put down she reminds me of Selma Blair, but blonde.
Yeah, I can kind of
She
see
had that
that.
kind of vibe about her.
I thought that they were trying to make her look like an edgier version of Meg Ryan. But yeah, Selma
Ah,
Blair
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. For sure. Yeah. So then we cut back to Dean. And Dean is asking around in this town still. He's like, he's not going to give up after just one interview. So he's talking to Harley and Stacy, who are like mom and pop Mrs. and Mrs. Santa Claus from the very beginning. Um, and he's interviewing them and they're not giving him anything. And then Emily, who's their cute little niece, comes in. And she and Dean look like they're like roughly the same age. And Emily hears what Dean's saying and she chimes in, "Did the guy have a tattoo?" And Dean says, "Yes, he did." And then
Mhm.
she looks at the picture and she turns to her aunt and uncle and she says, "You remember they were just married." And then Harley suddenly magically remembering because like
Oh,
he
yeah, I remember now.
yeah, it looks suspicious. And he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "You're right. They did stop for gas. Weren't here for more than 10 minutes." And Dean says, "Do you remember anything else?" And Harley says, "I told him how to get back to the interstate and they left town." And Dean says, "Can you point me in that same direction?" And he says, "Sure." And then it cuts to Dean driving. And I have written down Dean, one-handed driving. hot. Okay? It's the smirks for Laura. For me, it's any time that he's driving with just, like, one hand on the wheel. Hot. So hot, I can't
Yeah,
explain why, but it just is.
I like it when he's being goofy, and you like it
Yeah,
when he's being sexy.
I do. It's true. It's true. We're after different things. So as he's driving down this road looking hot as all get out, can I just say? The EMF starts going wild when he's passing this stretch of road, and we recognize it when he pulls in as the area where the
Yeah.
creepy, creepy, creepy fucking scarecrow dude is. Um, so he gets out of the car and he goes in, and fog is literally billowing in. Like every section of trees that he looks at, fog. Okay, the most dramatic Bela Lugosi fog that you could possibly imagine. I want you to know I'm eating this up. I love every minute of it. I love a good spooky fog. I'm here for it.
This bit was really scary.
It was very gothic and very creepy and very scary. So then we see the Jeepers Creepers Hookman Scarecrow. And he has empty eye sockets. His face is sort of like stitched on, but it's raggedy and awful and decayed looking. It looks like what we would expect like mummified old flesh to look like if you had been out in the weather like he has. He
Ugh.
has this raggedy gray hair, a skull kind of nose where it's just like holes in his face, and he has no mouth. It's like completely stitched over as if he's never had a mouth. And it is so fucking terrifying. Meanwhile, Dean gets a ladder, goes right up in his face, and goes,
I'm like, "What
dude.
are you doing?"
He goes, dude,
I
you
was like, "What?"
fugly.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was so funny.
Yeah.
So it was one of those scenes that took us from just being absolutely terrified because Dean is climbing up to this fucking murder scarecrow guy. His face is like inches from what we know is Vince's like decaying face, okay?
Oh.
And he gets so close to this extreme, just like dead mummy scarecrow. And
Mhm.
goes, dude,
I
you
literally thought
fugly.
he was gonna die.
I thought he was gonna die. I was terrified, okay? Terrified. So he's on the ladder, and we see the sickle that the scarecrow is holding, and we just go, Dean, you're gonna die. Please pay attention to your
Yeah.
surroundings, okay? Um, but then he says, nice tat, because he looks at the tattoo and he recognizes it as Vince's tattoo, and now he's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. This is getting real dark real quick. And you could see him putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And I was
Yeah.
just like, this is so good and so creepy. So I have a scarecrow Easter egg for you here. So
Oh.
this is the first of my creepy Easter eggs. Because honestly, because this town is like the only town that's completely made up. I was like, well, I'm not going to have anything here. Turns out I was wrong, and I have so much terrifying information for you. Okay, so some of it's funny, but some of it's so creepy. So in Europe, from an article that I found, it says scarecrows have long been tied to the supernatural boogeyman, a monster who is often depicted in tattered clothing. To a superstitious agrarian society, that just means people who rely on farming. Um, to a superstitious agrarian society, not only would scarecrows keep birds away from crops, but they would also scare children away from the fields when there might be strange things hiding. It links it to the legend of jack-o'-lantern as well. So there's some urban myths in which the creepy scarecrows around Halloween are tied to jack-o'-lantern, and I think that in a couple of different places, the folklore has become a little bit intertwined. So it lists in English and Irish in English and Irish folk tales, jack-o'-lantern is doomed to wander between heaven and hell. He carries a light in a turnip or a pumpkin, and later that light is substituted for his head. So when we see the
Oh.
pumpkin-headed scarecrows, some people have kind of intertwined those two tales of Stingy Jack or the jack-o'-lantern with the scarecrow, and it's
Yeah.
kind of
Oh.
come together, which is really creepy. So if you think
Yeah.
of the scarecrow as the boogeyman or as a creature that has been cursed to be kind of headless, then the whole stealing Vince's face becomes just extra gross. It's just
Yeah.
extra gross and creepy. So then it goes on to say that during the Middle Ages in Europe, small children would run through the fields clapping blocks together to scare the birds or throwing stones at them. They were the crow scarers. After the plague took the lives of many children, farmers began stuffing old clothes with straw and placing a turnip or gourd at the top as a head. These figures were lifted on poles and mounted in the fields. Through the ages, scarecrows have been fashioned to reflect images of the occult, of customs, culture, mythology, superstitions, or religion. To a farmer, they may simply be a symbol of the death and resurrection of the crops.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so
That is,
creepy and also tied in so
yeah.
well with this episode, especially the part about how it used to be medieval children who would be the
Mm.
original scarecrows, but then the plague came and all the kids were dead. So they were using
Yeah.
their clothing, like their leftover clothing, to create scarecrows in their fields to keep the birds away so that they would think that the kids were still out there to chase them away with like stones and things. Then I was like, that is hands down one of the darkest pieces of history. And that makes scarecrows so much more creepy than I ever could have imagined. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't,
Morbid scarecrows.
very morbid and very creepy. But before we go back to the episode, I'm going to make you laugh because I was like, how did we get scarecrows in Britain? So we know that there were scarecrows previous to this in ancient Egypt, along the Nile to protect the wheat fields and throughout Europe. But I was like, specifically in Europe, how did that happen? How did that happen in Britain and in other places that would go over to the US? So I found an article that said Greek farmers in 2500 BC carved wooden scarecrows to look like Priapus, the son of the god Dionysius and the goddess Aphrodite. We're going to go back to this in a second. Remember that, okay? Who was supposedly ugly enough to scare birds away from the vineyards and ensure good harvests. The scarecrows were painted purple with one hand holding a club to scare the birds and a sickle in the other for good harvests. As the Romans marched
Ah.
across Europe, they followed the Greeks and introduced Priapus scarecrows. So when we see like our creepy old pagan scarecrow and he has a sickle in his hand, that actually goes back to the representations of this Greek god. So that's
Ah.
terrifying still. Okay, we're still on terrifying. Let me take
Yeah.
you to fucking funny. So Priapus is, and depending on which version you're listening to, the son of two like love and fertility or bounty, like a god and a goddess. And this, he
Mhm.
has too much giddy up, okay, in his trunk. And the origin of things like phalluses being lucky and like men in Rome wearing like fucking phallus necklaces and penises everywhere. And probably the same reason why boys just like subconsciously want to draw penises all over the place
Yeah.
all the time. This is just a weird male trait. Probably is related to this idea. So he, as a god, has an enormous, giant, permanent boner, which is supposed to show us that he is the fertility of the fields. And there are literally in my show notes, I have a fresco from Pompeii where it's being held up by something we can't see, but somebody's come along with a string to like support him because it's too big. Okay. Then there's a second century one from Ephesus where he's holding the harvest up upon his giant dick. Okay. This is the definition of big dick energy. And it's like a harvest of grapes and vines and other things. Then there's one from the Vatican where it's the same thing, but because it's the Vatican and they had like a whole morality situation, I forget when, but I went on a tour there once and the tour guide told us about the whole fig leaf situation where they were going around with the statues that had, you know, erect situations or things that they were showing the twig and the plum a little bit too much for the priests to be happy about this. And some of them, they like chiseled parts of it off and
Yeah.
then put a fig leaf over it for modesty. If you look at the one at the Vatican, if you look underneath, he's lifting up his like Greek dress situation. And again, his dick is holding the harvest, okay? But you can see where they've chopped it off and then put like fruit in front of it. So from the front, it would just look like he's lifting up his robe for we don't know why, around to hold the harvest up, you know? And that made me laugh until I cried. So, all of that is linked in the show notes, and there will be photographs in there for you guys. So, whenever you think of big dick energy, think of Priapus.
Well, there's a little treat for everyone in the show notes then.
You're welcome. Oh, I'm dead.
Okay, so Dean heads back into town after this, doesn't he? He goes to the
Mhm.
gas station. Is it a gas station? I couldn't work out if it was a gas station or a shop or a B&B or all of the above.
All of the above. So this is an old school mom and pop situation where you have like a 1950s setup where you have a gas station, you have a B&B, bed and breakfast kind of thing, you have a shop where they're selling things, and obviously they also do
Okay.
mechanical repairs because that's how they're sabotaging people's vehicles so that they can sacrifice them to
Yeah.
their pagan god.
But yeah, so he's speaking to Emily, and she explains that she's living with her aunt and uncle, who are the couple that own the place, because her parents died. And she says everyone here is really nice, and I was like, yeah, too nice. Um,
Yep,
and she
yep.
said she kind of gives Dean even more clues because she says that the town seems like it's blessed, as all the
Mm,
surrounding towns aren't doing so well because people are losing their homes and farms. And then Dean asks about the scarecrow, and she says it's always been there. And then he notices another car that's mid repair and asks who that
yep,
belongs to, and if it was a couple by any chance, and she says yeah.
yep. Um, that one was so good. I wrote down the color grade was really interesting because all the colors are super desaturated except for the reds. And
Hmm.
it adds to the sense of menace, and the idea of like the blood sacrifice is kind of being subtly emphasized in this
Yeah.
scene. And then I write down Emily, a
Hmm.
sweet, innocent orphan blonde girl. With her name on her necklace, she is fucking doomed. I was like, I really didn't think that she was going to make it. I was like, oh no, she's far too sweet and innocent and blonde to survive. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and then it's exactly what you just said. She says all the towns around them are losing their homes and farms because of like crop loss is what's heavily implied, that they
Yeah.
aren't able to farm, that that's the entire lifeblood of this area, and that because they can't farm and they can't bring in the harvest, everything's dying and everyone's leaving, and they're the only ones where things are still okay. And I
Hmm.
thought that that was such good foreshadowing, and also so creepy because we know at this point that they have a scarecrow that's fucking slaughtering people left, right, and center. And she's like, "Oh, the town's blessed," and I'm like, "Yeah, blessed with murder."
Okay, so then we cut to Sam at the bus station, where
Yeah.
we find out there's no more buses that day to California. So Sam says there must be another way, and the ticket lady's like, "There is, buy a car." And I was like, "Well, that's not a very helpful suggestion, is it?"
I was like, "What a bitch."
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit unnecessary.
Yeah.
Um, he goes to call Dean but doesn't, and this mirrors because Dean did this earlier. He goes to call Sam when he
Yeah.
first arrives in the town and doesn't, and Sam does the same thing.
Yeah.
And then he sees Meg again, and she says she's also going to California. I was like, "Oh, how convenient!"
Right. So convenient. And then he says, "What happened to your ride?" And she says, "I cut him loose and I wrote his throat."
Yeah, she cut his head off.
Okay. So, they're having that conversation, and meanwhile, Dean is in Scotty's cafe, and Scotty is serving
This bit is funny.
the couple. It is so funny. So,
I love this bit.
Dean is ordering like just coffee and apple pie, and he's watching this couple, and they're talking about how they're on this road trip. And Scotty is super suspicious this entire time because he's trying to get Dean to shut
Yeah.
up. Because Dean obviously knows about the sacrifices, and he's trying to quietly hint to this couple that they need to leave. He's even offering to repair their car himself and saying that he can get it done faster. But the
For
girl is like,
free.
I'd rather have that done by a qualified mechanic. And generally, girl, I would agree with you. Don't let a strange man touch your car. But in this instance, it was not the best decision. So
No, because
Dean is
the
like,
real mechanic is trying to sabotage you.
yeah, the real mechanic is not really the real mechanic. But I can understand why she made the decisions that she made here. And Dean's noticing that the couple's being served apple juice and apple pies, and I was like, this is an entire apple banquet before these people get sacrificed. Like they're fattening them up on the apples that they're about to go be a part of the orchard with, and I was like, that's creepy as fuck. And then he's talking about how there's a lack of Sam, so he's trying to persuade them to leave. And at one point he says, my brother could give you this puppy dog look and you just buy right into it. Um, and I was like, it's true, he does need Sam. Like, Sam and Dean are such a great team because Dean does the hardline stuff and Sam is usually the one who convinces people to go along with
Yeah.
what Dean he like softens out the edges and convinces people. And I was laughing so hard at that point. And then the sheriff gets called in and says that he wants to have a word with Dean. And we can kind of figure out where this is going. So basically, the sheriff's car is following Dean to make sure that he leaves. They're trying to drive him out of the town. And then we
Mhm.
cut back to the bus station, and Sam and Meg are sitting around together having a conversation.
Yeah, they're bonding, aren't they? Because now looking back on it when we know what happens at the end, Meg is basically saying her and Sam are the same because she's saying
Yeah.
she also has issues with her parents,
Yeah.
um, and they expected her to do what she's told, and she left. And there's parallels of his experience and what he's doing now. I'm like, now I'm looking back on it. Does she? So she must know a lot about him.
Yeah. She definitely does. Um, and that was one of the things that, like, comes across as pretty demonic because
Yeah,
she seems to just know the dynamic and know everything and knows how to emotionally manipulate Sam.
yeah.
Um, and the only thing
Why
that
are
I
his
think
powers not working? Sorry.
well, I was gonna kind of suggest that she's clearly practicing some kind of demonic occult magic, right? So when you say you feel like she's a witch, you're not far off because she's not doing demony things. Like, she's not turning into dust and taking down airplanes.
Just like hanging
You're like,
around in
how many
vents.
minutes has it been? You know what I mean? Like, she's slitting throats and making phone calls with blood bowls. So she has some mojo going on. So my theory was that it's not that his mojo isn't working, it's that she has her own power. And I think that she's a
Mhm.
strong enough demonic occultist that, like, she's pushing back his instincts and kind of beguiling him a little bit.
Like maybe blocking his power.
Exactly.
Because does
Yeah.
he? Because like we know that he has visions, but does he sense things as well? Because Missouri was saying that he's really powerful in
Yeah.
Home in the episode Home. So does he have other powers, or maybe he just doesn't hasn't got them yet, or something?
So my take on that is sometimes he does send stuff because he says, remember before when he's giving Dean an excuse, he said, sometimes I have vibes. And he kind of does. And you can kind of see it in
Mm,
some of the previous episodes. But it seems a little bit like on again, off again with him. And I think it's because he's coming into his powers because this started with Jess.
mm,
So this has only been going on
yeah,
for around 6 months. And I think that he pushes it back because he knows that, well, we know that he thinks it makes him a freak and he has a
yeah,
negative association to it. So he's not exactly embracing it. Um,
and he
so
doesn't
I
quite fully understand them yet.
exactly that's what I was going to say. So I think that he has a lot of raw power, which is what Missouri picks up on, but he's not using it perfectly, just like we saw in the last episode where he doesn't realize his dad is there. He doesn't sense his dad's presence. And Missouri is like, I don't understand how he's so powerful, but he doesn't know that you're here. It shows us that he has
Yeah,
holes in his development with it. He's not this polished Charles Xavier type.
yeah. Okay. So, Dean then goes back to the town at sundown.
Mhm.
I liked this shot because it was when the sheriff kind of drives him out of town before, and then it's the same shot just later and it's dark, the same shot of like the entrance to the town, and then Dean's driving back in, which I liked.
That is a beautiful piece of continuity, and I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you picked up on that because I missed that. So you get 10
Oh,
points. You win.
it
Gold
was like this.
stars.
Yeah, it was like the same shot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and
Amazing.
then the couple, the couple from before from the restaurant are in the orchard because their car's broken down too, obviously.
Yep.
The Scarecrow comes after them. Um, oh, so he's chasing them through the woods, and then Dean pops out of nowhere with a shotgun and tells
Mhm.
them to go back to the car and shoots at the Scarecrow. And I had that as a thirst trap.
Thirst trap. Yep.
Oh,
100%.
and so like straight after he's like running away and shooting behind him as well. That whole thing was just a thirst trap.
It really, really was. Okay. It really was. Like, it's thirst trap after thirst trap. All of that is Dean in action, and we love to see it because it's hot as fuck. Okay.
Uh-huh. And
So
also, so
then,
when they get back to the car, oh sorry,
mhm. No, you go.
when they get back to the car as well, this is when we have the human shield moment again because Dean kind of turns around and shields both of them. But the scarecrow's disappeared, and I had that as a thirst trap as well.
Yeah, agreed. So Dean ends up calling Sam, or Sam's called Dean, but I'm pretty sure Dean called Sam. And they're having a conversation about what just happened, and Sam's saying the scarecrow climbed off of its cross. And he says, yeah, I'm telling you, Burkittsville, Indiana, fun town. And Sam says, it didn't kill the couple, did it? And Dean says, no, I can't cope without you, you know? And that made me laugh because it's kind of saying exactly what he said before. He says it in this kind of bantery way, but like we know he means it. And I thought that was both funny and kind of cute, and I was a big fan of that line. I love it so much.
Yeah.
So Dean goes on to describe that he believes that it's more than a spirit and that it's some kind of a pagan god. And Sam's like, why? And Dean says, because there's an annual cycle of the killings and the fact that the victims are always a man and a woman, like it's some kind of fertility rite. And then he talks about how you should see the locals and the way that they treated this couple. They were fattening them up like a Christmas turkey. And Sam says the last meal given to sacrificial victims. And Dean says, yeah, I'm thinking a ritual sacrifice to appease some pagan god. And Sam goes, so a god possesses the scarecrow, and then the scarecrow takes the sacrifice, and for another year the cops won't will, and the disease won't spread. So he's cracked the case. And this is where I have a small Easter egg for you guys. But if you go into my notes, you're going to see a much longer one because as we go through this episode, we work out that it's the Vanir and the Norse pagan gods. And he doesn't know that just yet, but he's about to find that out in a little while when he goes to see a professor who is the smoking man from the X-Files. Can I just say? Laura messaged me that while we were watching. She's like, oh my God, it's the smoking man. So many people come over here from the X-Files, and I have the coolest crossover when we get a little later on down the season that I am like dying to show you because you'll lose your mind.
Go.
But basically, I was honestly reading this thinking, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look this up and it's all gonna be trash. Like none of this is gonna be realistic at all. It's all gonna be wild and off the charts crazy. And I went and I looked up Norse mythology, and turns out, no, I was wrong. Like this is actually pretty accurate. There were sacrificial rituals. And I thought, but not the Vanir, because the Vanir, so you have in the pagan pantheon, you have the Vanir and then you have the Aesir. So Aesir is like Odin, Thor, and those gods. And the Vanir would be like Freya, Njord, and like her group of gods. So you have the Vanir are usually like harvest, love, joy, bounty, fertility, nature, whereas the Aesir are more about the laws, rules, to a degree, warfare and things like that. It's like this, the functioning of things, and almost you might say civilization versus nature and wildness. But turns out that the Vanir and the Aesir had a fight, and hostages were exchanged. And one of the things that Odin did, and Odin seems to be the main god associated with human sacrifice, was he took Freya and Njord and some of the other Vanir and involved them and made them part of ritual human sacrifice. So even that part is true. And the part about sacred trees and feeding the spirits in order to feed the land also goes along pretty well with Norse pagan tradition from back in the day. So I have those links in the show notes if you guys want to explore that further. But yeah, for our witchy notes, is this ritual satisfactorily accurate? The answer, unfortunately, creepily, terrifyingly, is in fact yes, it is accurate.
That was good. So good Easter eggs this episode.
Oh, I thank you.
So this whole bit in the car when Dean's on the phone to Sam, I found it really uncomfortable because it was kind of like Dean was saying goodbye to Sam, which Sam actually acknowledges later at the end of the conversation because he says to Meg, "Oh, he was saying goodbye."
Yeah.
And I didn't like it because I'm like, are they going to be apart all the time now? Like, I don't like it. And also, they're not really telling each other how they're really feeling, but they were trying to get the other one to say how they were feeling. And apparently Dean is now proud of Sam for the same reason that he was really pissed off with him before. And I'd written down because it was the whole standing up to their dad thing, because he says something like, hell, I wish I, and then stops himself when he's talking about like being proud of Sam for doing that. And I'd written down that maybe Dean is a little jealous that Sam gets to live the way that he wants, and maybe wishes that he could sometimes. But I just thought that was interesting from a like their relationship point of view, and I didn't like that it makes it seem like I know that they get together again back at the end, but
Yeah.
it makes it seem like they might be apart, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. It was really interesting because for the first time you see Dean actually telling Sam that he sees where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really big deal. And Sam kind of bends a little bit and you start to think they're about to make up and join up with each other, but then Dean really abruptly is like, you're right, you have the right to live your own life. And then he basically hangs up.
Yeah.
Um, which in my opinion is his version of a noble gesture. He's trying to give Sam what he wants. And I think he's also kind of trying to
Mhm.
protect Sam. Um, and luckily for us, because things do not go so well for Dean in the very near future, Sam has good instincts. Again, I'm going to say Sam has
Yeah.
vibes in this instance. Um, and it's like, well, I'm going to go save my brother. So Dean is in a college and he's talking to a professor who, fun fact, is the smoking man, as we mentioned.
He always plays an asshole.
He does always play a bad guy.
Like, Cigarette Smoking Man is horrible, and this guy is horrible too. We don't
It's
know
sure.
right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We
He
don't
ends
know
up being
that in the
horrible.
beginning, but we will know that very shortly.
He's
So,
he's called someone from the town.
yeah. So the professor is talking back and forth with Dean. Dean kind of claims that this is a hobby and he wants to learn about local lore. And the professor says, I'm afraid Indiana isn't really known for its pagan worship. And he says, well, what if it was imported? Like the pilgrims brought their religion over. Wasn't a lot of this area settled by immigrants? And he says, well, yeah. Um, and he says that they were settled by Scandinavians. Dean asks the professor what he can tell him about those pagan gods. And he opens this huge, scary looking, kind of like old looking tome. And they talk about the Vanir and them being Norse gods of protection, prosperity, keeping local settlements safe from harm. So villages would build effigies of the Vanir in the fields, and other villages would practice human sacrifice. And then he talks about the one male and one female.
Mhm.
And so the professor, through this conversation, is like, well, this man knows too much. And like Laura said,
Yeah.
clearly he has called somebody because the next thing that we know, the the sheriff comes and like just fucking snatches Dean. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
Um, and I was thinking to myself during this scene that it was really well done, but also like one man, one man against Dean Winchester. Suspicious. But anyway, we're
Yeah, but
gonna.
he took him by surprise, didn't he?
He did
He
take
took
him
him
by
by surprise
surprise.
because he
Yeah,
opened the door, smashes him in the face with a shotgun, the butt of a shotgun, and then he's KO'd.
yeah. He is KO'd. It's violent. Okay.
I had a fun fact here, which I forgot to look up on IMDb. I meant to, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it in anyway, and it can be a fun thing to check later.
Yeah.
Um, I saw as Dean is walking out of the room or towards the door, I saw some sort of camera filming equipment in the corner, like come into shot.
Oh, I saw that on the IMDb. So you are right about that because
Oh,
somebody else picked that up and put it on IMDb. So you are 100% correct. I never noticed this stuff ever, ever. Um,
I never usually notice cameras and things, but I did notice this one because it was it was quite obvious. Um, yeah, I forgot to look it up, so I'm glad you did.
yeah, I did. I can confirm that you were right. It was a good catch. You get more gold stars. Okay, so next we have the conspiracy theory situation where we have like these dark umbrellas and it's raining. And this is it's giving me Hot Fuzz. You know the villagers in Hot Fuzz and they're like for the greater good. They're all meeting in the rain under these dark umbrellas and it's the sheriff, Harley, Scotty, and Stacy. So like the aunt and uncle, the sheriff, and all these people, and they're saying that Dean has to die, but then they're also saying that Emily has to be the sacrifice because they have a boy, but now they need a girl. So Dean managed
Yeah.
to save their other sacrificial couple, and now they're scrambling to keep this blessing going. So like, well, he has to die anyway. We're just going to sacrifice him, but then we need a female to match him up with. And the only person who's like the right age is Emily. She's the only girl available. They don't have a couple that they can just yoink. So Harley is arguing
Well,
about
they
this.
could have used themselves.
I see. Okay. I was thinking that this entire time. And towards the
Yeah.
end, when we get to that part, I was so fucking satisfied. But yeah, they're all like,
Yep, same.
it has to happen. This is the only way. So then we next have a shot, and they are pushing Emily down into the cellar with Dean, and Emily's begging.
Wait, I had a quote that I just wanted to mention because it
Yeah.
annoyed me.
Okay.
So in this scene, there was a quote in this scene that annoyed me, and it's when Harley says, "But this is different. This is murder." And I was like, I think you'll find it's exactly the same, and it's been murder all the other times as well when you've been sacrificing people.
Yeah. Fun
Just
fact.
because it's now your niece doesn't mean it's murder. It's
Yeah.
always been
Yep.
Harley.
Those other people had families and relatives just like you, okay?
Yeah.
And you are just murdering people for your own gain. So shut up, Harley. Um yeah. So Sam has been trying to call Dean for forever. And Meg is saying, hey,
Mhm.
our bus came in. But Sam hangs up the phone and he's shaking his head and he's saying, you better catch it. I've got to go. And she's like, where? And he tells her where he's going. And she's like, wait. And you could tell that her agenda is to keep Sam away from Dean. Like she's trying to get him to go to California. And he says, I've been trying to call my brother for the last 3 hours and I'm just getting his voicemail. And she's giving all these excuses, like maybe the phone's turned off. And she's like, hey, Sam is not taking any of this. Sam's like, no. I'm going to go. And she's still trying to persuade him. And then Meg eventually says, why not? And Sam says, he's my family.
That was a thirst trap.
That was a thirst trap. I agree with you. So then we're back in the cellar, and Emily and Dean are having a conversation, and Dean realizes that Emily did not know about what was going on, and that Emily is definitely innocent, and they're probably going to be sacrificed together. So Dean tries to use Emily to get the lowdown, like to have a conversation about where the tree is, how they can destroy it, and says, like, basically, I think he's trying to give her morale and make her feel less afraid and comfort her, while also figuring out which tree is the first tree, which is what she calls it. Because she says to him that the immigrants brought it with them from where they came from and they planted it, and it's like the oldest tree in the orchard. She says she doesn't know where it is exactly. And then her Aunt Stacy comes in and says it's time. And then we cut to them being tied up on 2 different trees. And they're talking about like stuff. And Dean says to the people who are tying him down, how many people have you killed, Sheriff? How much blood is on your hands? And the sheriff says, we don't kill them. And Dean says, no, but you sure cover up afterwards. I mean, how many cars have you hidden? How many clothes have you buried? And this bitch just walks away. Okay. This man is cold as fuck. Terrifying, like sociopathic kind of vibes. And this again is, I think, why Dean does not like cops. Like, this is just reinforcing his hatred of law enforcement. And again, it's very hot fuzz. Okay, they have a conversation, and Emily's like, how could you possibly do this to me? And Stacy says, sweetheart, that's what sacrifice means. It means giving up something that you love for the greater good. And all I could think of was hot fuzz, the greater good. And she says, the town needs to be safe. The good of the many outweighs the good of the one. And I was like, she's now using spot quotes for evil. And that's just the wrongest of wrongs, okay? And Dean says, I hope your apple pie is freaking worth it.
That bit was really funny.
I died. It was so funny. And the next part that made me laugh so hard is Dean and Emily are talking to each other, and you can see Dean's trying to get out of his ropes. And Emily says, so what's the plan? And Dean says, I'm working on it. And then it fades out, and then it fades back in, and it's nighttime. So, like, it's gone from daytime to nighttime. This has been hours, and they're both still tied up. And she says, you don't have a plan, do you? And Dean's kind of panicked, but he says, I'm working on it. And then he says, can you see? And she says, what? And he says, is he moving yet? And she says, I can't see. And then you see a shadow kind of fall and you hear these leaves rustling. Um,
Yeah, we hear footsteps.
and you're like, oh, fuck. Okay. They are about to die right now. This is the Scarecrow. He's going to eat them. Everybody's fucked. Dean has such a pretty face. It would be such a crime. Okay. We're going, no, it can't. No. And you're terrified watching this scene. It's so
Mhm.
fucking creepy. And then you hear Sam's voice off camera going, Dean. And Dean is like, oh my God, thank God. He goes, oh, I take back everything I said. I'm so happy to see you. Come on. How did you get here? It's just, it's the best thing. He's like, I take everything back.
Yeah.
And I wrote down, like, that filmically, I thought this was amazing because it's this beautiful, dark Rembrandt kind of like oil painting lighting that they have going on. It looks
Yeah.
terrifying. Like, they're scary as fuck trees again. It's dark. The fog is rolling in again. But it's so beautifully done. So
Mhm.
Dean
It's good.
Dean gets saved by Sam. Sam saves everyone. And they're talking about how did you get here? And Sam goes, I stole a car. And Dean goes, that's my boy. And I was
That
just
was
like,
funny.
this is the best thing ever. So then
But
he
then it
says
goes instantly scary.
it goes
It
instantly
gets
scary.
yeah, because as he's untying Dean, Dean's like, "Keep an eye on the Scarecrow as it could come alive any minute." And Sam says, "What Scarecrow?" And we're like, "Uh-oh, it's gone."
Yeah, you go,
That bit was
oh
really
fuck,
scary.
son. And it is terrifying. And then it's so scary that Dean Winchester, who's always like, let's sort this out. Sam says,
Mhm.
let's find the tree and burn it. Dean's like, fuck this, I'm out. Dean says, nah, in the morning, let's just shag ass before Leatherface catches up. Um, so that's a reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we always have horror movie references. So they are
We love it.
running to get away. And and then all of the town elders are there and they have guns and they're armed and they're blocking the way. And I
Mhm.
thought this was really interesting. So you have Emily and Sam and Dean, which makes two boys and one girl on one side, and then on the other side, the way that it's spaced out, people the furthest away but the closest to the orchard are her aunt and uncle. So you have one man and one woman. And Emily says, please let us go. And Harley says, it'll be over quickly, I promise. And Emily says, please. And Harley says, Emily, you have to let him take you. You have to. And then the sickle goes through his chest. And I was like, bitch, it will be over quickly. And I laughed
Yep.
so hard because he really deserves what he gets. So then Stacy
Uh-huh.
gets like hooked by his other arm. Like he grabs her around the neck. Her uncle has a sickle sticking out through his fucking chest. And the last thing you see of them is you see the fucking Scarecrow god dude like dragging their corpses backwards. Well, I mean, like Stacy's still alive and screaming, but that's entertaining for us. But like her uncle does not look like this is a good way. Like he looks like a fish on a
No.
fucking hook. It's
Yes,
so messed up.
literally.
And Dean is like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Mhm. I
So,
just wrote, "I have no sympathy."
yeah, no sympathy is given for any of these people. So then we fade in again, and it's the orchard and it's morning, and we have Sam and Dean and Emily walking to find the sacred tree. And when they find it, it has this band of stuff around it that I think is supposed to be runes, but it's not even runes. I don't know. It's just carvings, whatever. Um, and so they go to light it up. And Sam pours the gasoline and Dean picks up a branch to light it up. But then Emily says, let me. And I was like, that's some final girl material right there. Like, I like the cut of her jib. And
Yeah.
he says, you know, the whole town's going to die. And Emily's just deadpan says, good. And then she lights the tree up. And I was like, you go, girl.
Yeah.
So,
We all agree with her.
yeah, 100%. Emily made the right call. Burn it all to the ground. Fuck those bastards. So they drop Emily off at a bus station and she is leaving town and she's smiling at them and they're waving goodbye to her. And Sam says, do you think she's going to be all right? And Dean says, I hope so. And Sam says, and the rest of the townspeople, they'll just get away with it. And Dean says, well, what'll happen to the town will have to be punishment enough because we all know that that town is going to
Mm.
be absolutely destroyed now because
They're not gonna have any more apples.
not only that, but they might even have the wrath of the god that they fucked over because they just destroyed
Ah,
his
yeah.
sacred tree, didn't they? So he could be
Mhm.
completely gone, or he could now be like, and now to kill everyone.
Yeah.
So I feel like justice is going to be served either way. So they're walking to Dean's car, and Dean says, "So can I drop you off somewhere?" And Sam says, "No, I think you're stuck with me." And they stop at the car, and Dean says, "What made you change your mind?" And Sam says, "I didn't. I still want to find Dad, and you're still a pain in the ass." Dean nods along, like, yeah, it's so funny. But he says, "But Jess and Mom, they're both gone. Dad is God knows where. You and me, we're all that's left. So if we're going to see this through, we're going to do it together." And Dean says, "Hold me, Sam. That was beautiful." And he puts his hand on Sam's shoulder,
That was
and
funny.
Sam beats him. Like, he whacks his arm, and then they both laugh. And Sam goes, "You should be kissing my ass. You were dead beat, dude." And Dean goes, "Yeah, right. I had a plan. I'd have gotten out." And Sam goes, "Yeah, right." And they're laughing, and they get into the car. And then we see it's later on, and we're cutting to Meg. There's another shady guy giving Meg a ride. And he's asking her where does she want to go. And she's like, "How about you pull over?" And it's very suggestive. And he's like, "Okay." And he's all happy. And Meg reaches into her bag and pulls out this silver bowl, which is full of like screaming heads. Okay. It's not right. We look
Yeah.
at it and we go, those people are trapped in that fucking bowl. That's a cult as fuck. Okay. She slits his throat with the tiniest, sharpest dagger apparently known to man, because it was so little, but she was like, this man is
Very
going,
sharp.
ugh. And she's catching his neck blood in her bowl, all calm and collected,
Yeah.
just like, this is how I make phone calls. And then she calls whatever demon she's calling.
She calls it father.
Yeah, she calls it father. So then the blood starts kind of making these sound wave things, and she's having a conversation. So we don't hear anything, we just see the blood move, but we hear her side of the conversation. And her side of the conversation goes like this: "It makes no sense. I could have stopped Sam. Hell, I could have taken them both. Why let them go?" And then she pauses because she's listening, and she says, "Yes." And then she says, "Yes," again. And then she says, "Yes, father." And then that's the end of the episode, fade to black.
So, yeah, my question is, who was she talking to? Obviously another demon. Now I know she's a demon, but
Yeah.
um, yeah.
So somebody high up in the ranks, and somebody pulling strings, who has at least one demonic child that we know of, right?
Mhm.
Because John says that they're like everywhere around them.
Yeah.
So we're left to assume that there's a much larger group at play than just this demonic daddy who is it? Is it the devil? Is it like
Mhm.
just a random demon in hell? Like, which demon is it? Um,
Mhm.
And then you have all the other demons that we know about from what John says to the boys at the beginning of the episode. And I feel like it just leaves us with this sense of foreshadowing and menace. And you start to
Mhm.
really wonder, like, what is Sam's deal?
Yeah, because we now know that they're definitely focusing on Sam. There's definitely something around Sam
Yep.
because of what she's just said.
Yep, exactly. Because she's really highlighting Sam. And she's saying, "Oh, I could have taken both of them," but that just feels like a bonus. Like, that doesn't feel like the main objective. The main objective was to take Sam and get him to Sacramento.
Mhm.
So it really does just make you go, okay, so what is Sam's deal? Why is it that John feels like he can't go to see Sam until after he solved this issue? Um, and why is he
Yeah.
trying so hard to keep, well, I mean, it's kind of obvious that he would want to keep his kids away from demons, but he's really making these decisions where we're having to understand that he's sending them away from danger when we thought that he was just kind of abandoning them this whole time. We realize he's keeping tabs on them, and he's sending them to specific coordinates because he's obviously trying to keep them both occupied and doing the job, but also away from demons. Because the second that Sam veers off of the track that his dad has prescribed, boom, Meg.
Yeah. I think my main takeaway from this episode is that Sam and Dean need to stay together because without the other one, they're both vulnerable to, dying. Because Dean would have died. Dean would have died if Sam hadn't shown up.
Yeah,
And also, something would have happened to Sam with Meg if he hadn't decided to go back
yeah.
because he was away from Dean. So, yeah, so they could have both died.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes really clear how important the family unit is in this episode and the dynamic. And we understand that their kind of, for lack of a better word, powers are
Yeah.
with each other. They work together because you know that Dean would have looked at Meg and been like, "No, she's shady." Like
Yeah.
Dean would have smelled that. Like Dean would have been like, "This is not a good person." Um, and because that's his strength. And then back at the cafeteria in the other place, Sam would have been like persuading the couple sooner, and Dean wouldn't have necessarily gotten caught. So there's so many different points in the
Mhm.
episode where it's really emphasized that if the boys are together, they're basically safe. But if they're separated, that's when they're really in danger. And that their
Yeah. They need
strength
each
and
other.
their ability to hunt monsters and fight these inhuman, terrible forces comes from their bond as brothers.
Yeah. And I'm glad they didn't stay separated at the end of the episode.
Yeah, me too. It's actually so satisfying when they get back together and when they have that banter.
I love the brotherly banter. We know I like that.
Yep. Yeah. What was your favorite thirst trap?
um, Human Shield Dean.
Yeah. That's such a good moment. I think for me it's the moment when he chambers the shotgun
Mhm.
and you just see him silhouetted against the backdrop of the trees and he's saving that couple. I love that.
Yeah.
That's hot.
That was like, so both of ours are kind of like that. It was that same bit, wasn't it, with
Yeah,
him?
it's basically the same sequence, isn't it? It's just Dean being really heroic.
Yours was right at the start and mine was right at
Yep.
the end.
Yeah.
um, I didn't have a favorite quote written down, but I'm going to just scroll back. Have you got yours?
Favorite quote of this episode is is probably that part where Dean's like, "I'm so happy to see you. I take back everything that I said."
See, I've got two that I need to choose from. I thought you were going to have one of them. So it's either no. My runner up is I hope your apple pie is freaking worth it.
Oh my god, that
And
one's
my
so good.
favorite, I think my favorite though was the what's the plan? I'm working on it. And then you don't have a plan, do
But do
you?
you?
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Like hours later, I'm still working on
Yeah,
it.
that one was so funny. It was so funny. I love both of those. I think if I'd been really thinking about it and actually taking notes, which I forgot to do, I probably would have picked. I hope your apple pie is freaking worth it.
um, do we have a overall scare rating for the episode?
I give it a 10 out of 10. It's freaky. It made me
Yeah,
scared.
I'm going to give it a 9.5 just because I feel like the Bloody Mary episode had the 10 and this wasn't quite. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still scared, but I wasn't as scared as that episode.
That's fair. That one hit a lot of phobias for you. So that's completely understandable. Villain hot or not. I guess
Nah,
the real villains are multiple, aren't they? They're the townspeople and they're not hot.
no, none of them are hot.
No.
The Scarecrow isn't hot and the people aren't hot.
No, no hot villain. And then there's not really well, I mean, there is a hotel. It's at the beginning, but we don't see very much of it, so it's hard to kind of rate it, I feel like.
Yeah, we didn't really see it enough.
No, I don't it's literally in the frame for, like, a couple of seconds, and mostly what we're seeing is close-up of the reaction shots of Sam and Dean,
Mhm.
and then the coverage of Jeffrey Dean Morgan. We don't really see the room, so I feel like we can't really give it an accurate rating on the motel scale, so
No.
I think that's about rounding us up.
Yeah.
Alrighty, shall we end the episode?
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. We would be very grateful. And if you know someone who would enjoy it, please share.
You can find us on Instagram at the Witches of Letters podcast, or you can email us at thewitchesofletters@gmail.com.
Until next time, stay safe out there, have each other's backs, and always keep fighting.